Hi, as part of our work of representing the voice of business, I am delighted to welcome you to this, a new video series entitled Talking Thames Valley. We've invited respected journalist Andrew Peach to have conversations with a selection of our members who represent industries across the wider region and businesses large and small. They're going to share their stories of the challenges and opportunities that they and their clients are facing. And also we're going to be using it as part of our wider campaign to ensure that in an election year that the Thames Valley business community is recognised for its contribution to the wider challenges that the UK faces. Sit back and enjoy.
Right, okie dokie. So let me ask you then, Stuart, just to introduce yourself and your company, and then we'll chat.
Yeah, I'm Stuart Carroll. I'm a Director of Market Access and Policy Affairs for Moderna UK and Ireland, and Moderna is a member of the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I've also been chairing our very important plans and work on the local skills and improvement plans.
And just for anyone who doesn't know, what does Moderna do?
So Moderna, of course, came to prominence in the pandemic. We produce and manufacture one of the COVID vaccines, but we specialize in the mRNA technology, and we're now looking to apply that science and technology to a range of different disease areas. And we're also currently working with the UK government on future pandemic preparedness. We've got a significant investment which is actually going into Harwell, Oxfordshire, which includes a manufacturing site as well as some local R&D capability.
Well, I'm a Moderna success story because I had 3 shots of Moderna vaccine and never ever tested positive for COVID. So on that basis, it was good stuff. How has the pandemic changed your business? Because you talk about how central you were to it and to the country's response to the pandemic. That must have had a huge impact on your company and your work.
Yes, of course, the pandemic was a truly extraordinary event, and for an organisation like Moderna that had effectively come from nowhere, had come from being a very small biotech company, but had been diligently researching the mRNA technology to providing one of the vaccines to help get us through the pandemic and out of the pandemic was significant. And as we've now moved into an endemic world, the organisation is having to very much change its focus on what can we do to support future pandemic preparedness, but also how can we further the promise of mRNA science and technology, not just for COVID-19, but for a range of disease and illnesses. And that's where the organisation is now very much focusing.
Okay. And just broadening it out from the company to business in the area, the pandemic has had an enormous impact on how business is conducted. We're having this conversation on a Friday and the roads are completely empty. I'm here at Slough Trading Estate, completely empty because it's Friday and everyone works at home now on a Friday, or large numbers of people do. Give me a bit more of a take on what's changed in terms of business in our area because of the pandemic and the things we learned during it.
Absolutely, I think a number of things have changed, and actually, I'm currently completing a PhD, which is looking at the pandemic as a whole, but specifically focusing in on the vaccination side, because I was previously on the vaccines task force, and I've been giving this a lot of thought actually about how do we learn lessons from what happened in the pandemic. What does it mean for the present and the future? And as you rightly say, when we just think about work patterns and the work environment, there has been a significant change. I think one of the big positives is it's shown the power of technology, but we actually can do a lot more remote working. We can actually have a more flexible ergonomic environment, which allows individuals to really utilize their skill sets and their expertise and experience. I think actually one of the benefits of that is it can be a lot more family friendly. It can be a lot more amenable to people's personal situations and circumstances. I think one of the cautionary notes we do need to sound is that, of course, there's no substitute for face-to-face contact. There's no substitute for being together as a team, as an organisation. And I think all organisations are probably still trying to find that balance, that equilibrium between what is required in terms of office time or on-site time versus remote working. That's an equilibrium that is always going to have to evolve because it depends on economic imperatives, social imperatives, and broader circumstances. But I do think the pandemic did show that you can do things differently. And I think for me, the three major things it showed is that innovation is absolutely critical, enterprise is essential, and also how we approach risk and uncertainty, how we visualize that, how we conceptualize that is absolutely critical. And so what we've got to do, I think, is not just sort of see the pandemic for all of its, really challenging, awful realities. And there's very little to good to come from a pandemic. But one of the salutary things is that it can teach us to do things differently. And I think we do owe it to particularly those people who sadly passed away in the pandemic or who have suffered through the pandemic to ensure that we take that lesson forward. And that's a real big lesson for business as well.
I mean, it's obviously wasteful, isn't it, to have people spending time and money with all the environmental impact of traveling to workplaces more than is necessary. But it obviously is necessary to an extent because working from home, it was kind of amazing that it was possible during the pandemic, but there was an awful lot that was difficult, frustrating about it. There was lacking productivity, lacked all that personal interaction in terms of actual workplace benefit, but also personal well-being, being able to see your colleagues and socialize, all of those things. So do you think we're still working through to get to the ideal balance between all of this in the workplace?
I think we absolutely are. And one of the, I think, things the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce has done particularly well is that it actually pre-pandemic set up a mental health and wellbeing steering group, and I've been quite actively involved in that group. And that's been looking at what can businesses, organisations do, regardless of size, to ensure that particularly the mental health aspect for any employee is being optimised. And of course, when we think about the pandemic, one of the big learnings again is around the absolute criticality of mental health, and lots of people's mental health suffered, particularly because of lockdowns and being isolated. And actually, as we now transition and as we keep moving into this new world post-pandemic, I think we do need to think about what are some of the lessons on mental health. And as you rightly allude to, I think one of the things that is a potential positive to take forward is that we don't need people traveling necessarily 5 days a week in the classically monotonous way at particular times. We can have more flexi working. Technology allows that. Yes, that will always be role dependent to a degree, but that's something that we should be fostering and encouraging. But also on the flip side, we have to remember that human contact is paramount. So I think it's trying to find that equilibrium. I think flexible policies are the right way, but that mustn't be to the extent that you are sacrificing time together, being around people, interacting with people. Some of those indirect benefits are enormous. And I think what we need to do, in the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce is a great forum for this, is to keep trying to look at what's best practice. And of course, there isn't a one size fits all. That's going to be industry sector dependent. But we have to, I think, be committed to trying to research that, understand that, and most importantly, communicate around that, share what's working well and maybe share what's not working so well. That's definitely going to, I think, have a huge impact on broader health and well-being.
And individuals need different things, don't they? Just on an individual basis, but also it's partly a generational thing. I think, people who've got families, quite like being at home. People who are living on their own, who might be younger, like being at work and like being around people in that sort of environment. Let's talk about skills, because this is something that's come out of so many conversations. Moderna is obviously in a very specific sector doing specific work. What skills do you need from young people coming into that sector?
Yes, the skills is a huge imperative, and that's the case for any sector. But I think particularly when you look at life sciences, one of the things we've actually seen, which has been a cause of the pandemic, is a stimulus in product pipelines across the whole industry, and that's one of the salutary consequences of the pandemic. Like I mentioned earlier, there are not many good things to come from a pandemic at all, of course not. But what it has done is it's almost stimulated science and technology. It's made the whole industry look at things differently, look at how can we research, how can we conduct science, how can we look at diseases and illnesses and try and find cures or medications or even more therapeutic preventative solutions. And with that, particularly with technology like mRNA uses, a lot of technology as well as science. It actually uses a lot of AI to actually try and codify what is a particular disease, particular illness. So you can use almost an engineering footprint then to translate that into real science in a safe, efficacious, and high quality way. And so the skills we need there are not just scientists who are going to be able to be innovative, but also engineers, technologists. And of course, when you then look at the manufacturing approach, it is different to traditional manufacturing. So the types of manufacturing professional, the types of engineering professional for the future, as well as the present, also needs to evolve. So it's a very high skilled environment. But the good news there is that, of course, high skilled jobs pay well, they're great for the economy. And in the case of life sciences, it's not just the economy, of course, it's about society. This is about trying to find interventions, hopefully cure, certainly therapeutic interventions, if not preventative interventions, for some of the serious killer diseases and illnesses which still sadly pervade the world. So I think it's an area which I think we should be very passionate about, have a lot of energy and enthusiasm about, but we do need to work with government to ensure that we have the right education, we have the right incentives, the right opportunities, and I think crucially as well that we are also spreading the opportunity to all sorts of communities. That's very, very important. We need to ensure that any skills plan isn't just a great skills plan in terms of what's needed, but we take that to the whole of the community. And I know the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce is very committed to that, which is great to see.
And final thought, Stuart, one thing that the Chamber is very keen to do is to amplify the voice of business around here to politicians. It's an important time to be doing that because we don't know who's going to be running the country in 6 or 12 months from now. What's the thing the politicians need to hear from business right now, do you think?
I think there are three critical messages for politicians. The first is that skills can never be under any circumstances a nice to have. It has to be a central core mission for any government as part of not just an economic policy, but a social policy. And that's why actually having LSIPs and having local organisations like the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce is so critical, because that will also vary by area and the opportunity will vary by area, but having flexible plans that can allow us as a country to take advantage of changes in technology and science is really, really important. I think the second thing is around supporting business, particularly smaller businesses. Smaller businesses, are the lifeblood of the UK economy, and we absolutely need to ensure that the tax and regulatory framework is a lot more competitive for smaller businesses. But also, I touched upon earlier, health and well-being, making sure that things like occupational health schemes can be taken to smaller businesses. There are many smaller businesses I've spoken to, even local plumbers, electricians, only have a couple of people working for them who want to do more in that regard, but they don't know how to do it, and they need some support, they need some framework. And I think the third major thing we also need to continue to look at is how can we incentivize entrepreneurs, which include scientists, by the way, people working away in labs, trying to discover new treatments, new technologies for the future. We need to really pinpoint ourselves as a country to say to anybody who's going to give it a go, we want to support you, we want to incentivize you. That's where we're going to get economic growth ultimately. We have to grow our way out of this economic challenge, but also we need to socially inspire people. And we need to, I think, send a message out that we want to find the next Newton, Einstein of the future. And we believe absolutely that amongst the 68 million people of the UK, and I'm absolutely convinced in the Thames Valley, those people exist. So let's go and find them, support them, encourage them, and I think there's a lot we could achieve together.
That's great, Stuart. Thank you very much. Thank you for chatting and taking part.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
That was really nice. Thank you very much, Stuart. I really appreciate your time. There's lots of interesting food for thought there, for sure. Thank you.
No, lovely to see you again.
Yes, nice to chat. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.